NBC Sports Network will shut down on December 31st. Denny Hamlin and Alex Bowman were not very happy with each other after the Cup Series race at Martinsville, and Austin Hill will drive full-time for RSR in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2022. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to our video. We've got a ton of NASCAR stories to discuss here today on the channel. Let's go and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start off with the resin compound, as Phoenix will be using the resin compound instead of PJ1 at this upcoming weekend's race at Phoenix. We started seeing more resin compound being used. The compound that they originally used at Nashville, they'll be using that at this upcoming weekend at Phoenix. They've used it at Texas Motor Speedway and also have used it at Michigan as well. And what this is supposed to do is supposed to provide multiple grooves of racing. Really weren't able to see a lot of the good effects from that race just because, of course, Texas has so much PJ1 on it. I really didn't think it mattered. I'm not sure how much PJ1 has been applied, so hopefully the resin compound will be able to help take away some of those PJ1s. Hopefully we'll see multiple grooves of racing and see great racing, but I'm really happy at least that we'll see something instead of PJ1 being used for this upcoming race at Phoenix. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Ally. As Lally has bought space on 23 digital billboards at Phoenix celebrating Alex Bowman's best season, and includes him getting Alex's first Cup Series win as a primary sponsor. Alex Bowman, of course, is from Arizona, so it definitely makes a lot of sense. Of course, it is a hometown track. It makes a lot of sense that there has been a lot of space brought up from Lally. And, of course, he's picked up 4 wins so far in the 2021 season, picking up a win most recently at Martinsville and winning earlier this year at Dover, also winning at Pocono, also picking up a win at Richmond in clutch victory. So really cool to see this for sure that Ally has been able to find sponsorship and able to find billboards. I think this is really awesome as a whole. I'm really looking forward to this for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Burton Continuum. As there is going to be a new podcast that is going to be coming on Dirty Mo Media, which is going to be called the Burton Continuum, which is going to be a 10-episode podcast that is going to feature all the Burtons, including Harrison Burton and Jeb Burton. That's going to have some explicit language, so children probably are not going to be wanting to watch this podcast, even though children probably do not watch this podcast. But I think this is really cool. We've seen a couple podcasts that have popped up from the Dirty Mo Media. Of course, the Door Bumper Clear podcast, and on other podcasts that have really done well, and also Dale Jr.'s podcast, Dale Jr. Dallin, which has been very successful on their podcast as well, which I think has been great shows. I think Door Bumper Clear podcast have provided some good information, but they've also provided some not so great information throughout the times. But I think it's really cool. I'm actually looking forward to this for sure, and I think that this is a really cool and awesome addition to the show. I think it's really awesome. I'm looking forward to this for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the owner's points situation going on for the charter situation. So the 51 car is currently 33rd in the teams in charter points and is 4 points ahead of the 15 and 34th. If the 15 car is able to stay at least minimum 4 points ahead, or is able to finish at least stay ahead, or not finish 4 positions behind the 15 car this weekend, the 51 car will not have a chance of being revoked by NASCAR or will not be forced to be sold by Richard Petty. So hopefully this 51 car, because again, the 51 car is actually performing a little bit better over the last couple weeks. We've seen this car forming a little bit better. It has shown a little bit more speed on the racetrack. So I think that this is really awesome and really exciting as a whole. That it is not going to, if it does end up happening, it does not end up getting sold, I think it'll be great for the sport as a whole if it doesn't end up being sold. So really happy about that for sure. And hopefully there is no chance of that being sold. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Martinsville Speedway in this past weekend. Now, there was an incredible amount of people that attended this past weekend's race at Martinsville. As a matter of fact, Clay Campbell says that the crowd is the largest it has probably been since 2016. Now, last year, Martinsville was not able to host any fans. Actually, in the second race, they only had 1,000 fans show up. So for the fact that they were able to get full capacity, not only that, the energy around this race, especially craziness and chaos that happened in this race, but the energy around this race and the events was so incredible. You had so many people go to the event, people that went for the first time, and the energy around it was absolutely incredible. And it feels like this could be the championship race in the future, though. I think NASCAR is probably going to want to keep this as a second to last race so we can have all the headlines going into championship week, regardless of which track you end up going to. But the fact that this had probably the loudest crowd attendance that we have ever seen, I think is absolutely magnificent and absolutely incredible as a whole. So that is really awesome for sure to see that. You get to see an incredible crowd show up at that event. So really excited about that for sure, and really glad about that. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about manufacturer titles for the Cup Series, Xfinity Series, and the Truck Series. So titles have already been decided at this point. For Xfinity and Trucks, Chevy have won the Xfinity Series and Cup Series titles. I believe this is the 12th straight year that Chevy, I think, has won the Xfinity Series titles. I may be wrong on that, but at least the Chevy 12th time that they've won an Xfinity. For Cup, I think this is like the 10th or 12th time they've won, I think like 20th time they've won the manufacturer's title. And for the Truck Series, Toyota has won the Truck Series title once again. They did not win it last year. Chevy won the Trucks owner's title last time, but Toyota was able to win the Trucks manufacturer title this year around. That's really, really awesome to see that they were able to win those manufacturer titles. Congratulations to both manufacturers. One then Cherokee. Ford did not win any of them, and I think it was because Ford this year, unfortunately, was down in all aspects. Ford really did not have any major good programs in the Truck Series this year. In Xfinity, they only had a few cars, only had 3 or 4 cars that really showed up in those manufacturer camps. And Ford this year took a major downbeat. I mean, this year you had none of the Penske cars make the championship. Ford nor Fords made the championship Ford this year. I mean, look at it. You have 2 Gibbs cars versus 2 Hendrick cars, so that's probably why that's the case and why Toyota and Chevy have really won the manufacturer titles. The last time Ford won one was in 2018, so it is unfortunate Ford was not able to win, but I think at least in a positive way, at least the good news is that Chevy and Toyota were able to win the manufacturer titles. So congratulations to both manufacturers on winning the manufacturer titles. I think that's really, really cool to see for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about 2021-22 Camping Rolled Truck Series Chevy bodies. Now, so far, the Ford and the Toyota bodies have been revealed, and on Friday, the Truck Series body was officially revealed, and it is going to be the Chevrolet Silverado RST. This one looks really, really cool. In my opinion, I've been kind of a fan of the Ford and Toyotas, but I think of the 3 bodies that I've seen, I would put Chevy number 1, I would put second place, I definitely put Ford, and I put Toyota number 3. I think that all of them look really, really good. I know there's been a lot of controversy around the Toyota body, but I actually really like that body. I think it looks really, really signature. I think it looks really, really cool as well. And I think at least it's really, really cool. At least we get to see manufacture at least a really cool new body updates. They've been needing an update for the last couple of years. I think the last time they updated the Truck Series bodies was, I believe, back in 2019 or 2000. I think back in 2019 was the last time they updated bodies. But I really like the Chevy body. It's my favorite of the 3, and we'll see this out there. I do like the signature looks that they're bringing going into next year. I think it is really, really cool, and I'm looking forward to seeing these bodies. And now we're going to move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Sheldon Creed. As Sheldon Creed is going to be driving the 78 for Beecham McCloud Motorsports at this upcoming weekend's race at Phoenix. Sheldon Creed will be making his, I think, first start in the NASCAR Xfinity Series this year, and I believe that RSR probably will be providing some technical support for that event as well to make sure that he has a good car for the upcoming weekend. Now, Sheldon Creed will not be competing for the Camping World Truck Series Championship. He was eliminated in the past round, but to make his first Xfinity Series start this year is really, really cool. Probably trying to get some experience in the NASCAR Xfinity Series before he does officially go full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series next year. So hopefully Sheldon Creed can run well. If they have the comp, if they have a good car coming into the weekend, if they can get support from RTR, I think he has a good shot at top 10 or top 15. I think he's a really good driver, and he'll have some experience for running the Truck Series race, though there is going to be practice qualifying for those races, so probably have to qualify in, though I think the 78 car has some pretty decent notice points where they can back it up. So hopefully Sheldon Creed is able to make it in. He'll be running the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Phoenix. And now we're going to move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Willie Allen. As Willie Allen is going to be driving to 25 for Lally WAR Racing this weekend at Phoenix. Josh Berry has driven most of the year for the 25 team after Timothy Peters was let go, but at Talladega, Willie Allen made his first Truck Series start in many, many years, in a couple, like 10 years. I think the last time he ran a Truck Series race back, actually, I think in 2014. But he'll be running a second race in 2021, as, of course, he is a team owner, so it makes a lot of sense for him to make his last start of the year. It's really cool to see he's making a return. I think if this car can finish in the top 20 or top 25, that'd be a really cool finish. This truck has had capabilities, but of course, it's been when Josh Berry has been in the truck. So Hopefully, Willie Allen will have a very strong run. Hopefully, he'll have a good enough run, and hopefully he can do good enough to get this 25 truck a good end of the season. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Ty Dillon. As Ty Dillon is going to be driving to 32 for Brett Holmes Racing this weekend at Phoenix. I cannot remember the last time that Ty Dillon made a start in the NASCAR Camping World Truck Series. It's been quite a bit of time since he has raced in the NASCAR Truck Series, so it's really cool to see that Ty Dillon is making his return to the Truck Series. His truck has ran pretty decent with Sam Mayer's been in it. It's not a fantastic truck, but to see that Ty Dillon will have an opportunity to race in his first Truck Series start of this year, I think is really, really awesome. And I think it is really exciting as a whole, too, that he is making his Truck Series return. I think he finished in the top 25. I think that'd be really, really cool. I believe this truck has good enough position in the owner's points, too, where they're not going to have to rely on owner's points because they've ran enough races. So hope he can have a good enough run, and hopefully he'll be able to qualify for the Truck Series race at Phoenix. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Will Rogers. As Will Rogers is going to be driving to 34 for a Raymond Brothers Racing this weekend at Phoenix. Really awesome to see that Will Rogers is going to be driving for Raymond Brothers Racing at Phoenix. I think that he wants to run full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series next year with Sam Hunt Racing, and I think he's trying to have a good enough run with the 34 team. Now, I don't think the Raymond Brothers team is a fast organization, though I do think they may have some technical support coming this weekend from Twitter that may be able to help out Will Rogers. And I also think Will Rogers is a very solid driver. So I think to go for Will Rogers, in all honesty, in all seriousness, I think to go for him is to try to at least complete as many laps as possible. Try to get this truck to finish in the top 30. I know those are very low and not major goals, but at the same time, this truck is not really that fast. So he'll have to try to qualify and hopefully he'll be able to do that. And if he can, I think he could have a very solid run this weekend. But the top 30 would be a great run for Will Rogers. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Todd Peck. As Todd Peck will be driving the 96 for Peck Motorsports this weekend at Phoenix. Todd Peck has attempted to run in the NASCAR Truck Series this year in a couple attempts. I don't think he's been able to make any starts so far in the Truck Series, and he will have to qualify into the Truck Series race. Then he'll have to rely on owner's points this week. He won't have any owner's points really back it up, so he'll be relying to try to make it into the race on qualifying position. If they can have enough speed to make it in, that'd be really, really cool. They are go-to-go Homer car. They need to make it in on qualifying. If he can do that, I think the goal is to try to get as many laps as possible, get a good enough finish for owner's points going into next year. And if he can make it, I think that'd be really impressive and great to see that that truck will be returning this weekend at Phoenix. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Sieg. As Kyle Sieg will be driving to 39 for RSS Racing this weekend at Phoenix. I believe that Kyle Sieg, I'm not sure if Kyle Sieg has made any NASCAR Xfinity Series starts this year, but it is really, really cool to see that Kyle Sieg will be running in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in the 39 car. And I think that this is technically the flagship car, though they're probably going to be putting more resources in Ryan's car, which we'll talk about in a second. But Kyle Sieg, I think, is a very talented driver. I think he's had some pretty good starts with the RSS Racing camp this year. He is a very young driver who has a lot of talent and a lot of potential to be great. I think if he could come out of this weekend with a top 20, I think that'd be really, really impressive. The 39 car has been really, really fast at points. So we'll have to wait and see what happens, but I'm really excited to see that Kyle Sieg will be running for RSS Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And now we're going to move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Ryan Sieg. As Ryan Sieg is going to be driving to 38 for RSS Racing this weekend at Phoenix. He'll be driving his second car. This is the first time I believe that RSS Racing is going to have two cars this year in 2022. We'll talk about RSS Racing and their future here in a little bit on the channel, but I'm really happy to see that Ryan Sieg is going to run in a second car. I think they'll probably put more resources in Ryan just because he's been competing full time. I think the goal for the RSS Racing, if they both can finish in the top 20, both Ryan and Kyle can finish in the top 20, I think that'd be really, really good runs for both. So really excited to see that Ryan Sieg will be running in the NASCAR Xfinity Series race along with his brother Kyle. They haven't raced together, I think, in the Xfinity so far this year. So it's really cool to see that Ryan will be running in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And now we're going to move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Chase Elliott. As Chase Elliott is going to be making his sprint car debut at Merced Speedway on November 23rd and 24th, a couple weeks after the NASCAR Cup Series season ends. Really great to see that Chase Elliott is going to run some other select events. We've already have some drivers that are going to be running some really cool events coming up. We have Kyle Busch that is going to be running in the National Rallycross race a week after the championship. And I think it is really important that Chase Elliott is doing this, going out there and running in other respective series. Kyle Larson is also going to be running in this event as well. And I think Kyle Larson is going to be able to go in there and give a lot of good pointers to Chase Elliott, as Kyle Larson has been arguably the best driver that's raced in North America today. And he's been a driver that knows how to get it done on the racetrack. So I'm really happy to see that Chase Elliott is making his first ever sprint car race. And I think he's also trying to get a little more experience for the Bristol Dirt event. And I think he's going to try to also run the Chili Bowl next year as well. He has said he's wanted to run the Chili Bowl more times. So hopefully he'll be able to do that. If he can have a good enough run in his sprint car debut, I think he'd have a very good opportunity to do that. So I'm really excited to see that Chase Elliott is making his sprint car debut. I think it's great for the sprint car world. It's great for the series, and I'm happy to see this for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Daniel Dye. As Daniel Dye will be driving full-time in ARCA for GMS Racing in 2022, driving the 21 car full-time. I'm really excited to see this. Daniel Dye, I think, is an absolutely really talented driver. He did get hurt earlier this year in an ARCA race after some contact from Taylor Gray. But I think that Daniel Dye absolutely is an exceptionally gifted and exceptionally talented driver. The dude knows how to get it done. The dude knows what he's doing on the racetrack, and he absolutely deserves this opportunity to go full-time. Now, he's going to have some pretty tight competition next year. He's going to have guys like Sammy Smith Jr., probably Taylor Gray will be close to running full-time next year. He'll be turning 18 around, I think, 2023. He'll be 17 next year. So he's got about a year before he goes full-time. But you're going to have some really talented, gifted drivers. You're going to have Roger Kroof, and you're going to have Nick Sanchez that are racing full-time as well next year, which is going to be a really talented lineup right there. But at the same time, I think that this is really exciting for NASCAR, the ARCA series, and maybe in the future he'll make a jump up to trucks in the future for GMS Racing. But I don't think he was ready for trucks at the moment. But I think the fact that he is going full-time with GMS Racing is a great opportunity for him. Really excited about this, and I'm happy to see that he'll be running full-time for GMS in the ARCA series. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Dean Thompson. As Dean Thompson will drive full-time for Nice Motorsports in the Camping World Truck Series in 2022. Number, crew chief, and everything else has not been announced at this time, but like I said, he will drive full-time for Nice Motorsports in the 2022 season. Now, Dean Thompson will be making his Truck Series debut for Nice Motorsports in this upcoming race at Phoenix. He also did race, I think, for Nice Motorsports in the ARCA race at Kansas. Had a pretty decent finish. I think he finished in the top 10 in this first ever ARCA race at Kansas. But the fact he'll be going full-time after not having any Truck Series starts is definitely really interesting. Probably does have some sponsorship and probably does have some backing behind him as a whole. Now, I believe he's driven for the Bill McAnally Racing Organization in ARCA West. I'm not entirely sure. But I also believe he's going to be running in the ARCA West races upcoming weekend in Phoenix when there's one race left in that championship. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens. It's definitely really interesting, though, that he's going to run in that event full-time with the team. And he's also going to be joining Carson Hostbar next year. The big question going into next year right now is who is going to be the final driver that is going to join him in ARCA next, in that team next year. Is Ryan Truex going to keep driving for them full-time? Because Ryan Truex does have marquee spots that is sponsored in his Xfinity Series and his trucks and also Xfinity Series endeavors when he did drive in the Xfinity Series. We'll have to wait and see what happens. So I'm really excited about this for sure. And huge congratulations to him on going full-time in the Truck Series in 2022. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about BJ McCloud. BJ McCloud had an interview recently with, I can't remember who it was from FrontStretch.com, but he had an interview recently with someone from FrontStretch.com, and he talked about the future of Live Fast Motorsports. He says that he's looking to bring Live Fast Motorsports to the 30th place team in 2022 and hopes to have engine leasing by 2023. Now, BJ McCloud does have some loose ties with SHR, not any major ties currently at the moment. But the team has kind of had a down first year. They've been the worst performing of the new 3 or 4 new big organizations come in compared to 2311 Trackhouse and even Collie. They've been a team that has been really far behind. And they haven't really reached the goals of being like Go Fast Racing. They've been a team that's finished outside the top 30 many weeks. Though I do think I've seen a little bit of improvement from the organization over time. So maybe going into next year, we may end up seeing BJ McCloud's team become a much better organization. They're also adding some new employees going into next year. And he did talk about how the next-gen car will hopefully bring some more incredible opportunities for the team going into next year. So I really want to see this team do good. I want any team to come to the sport, even teams we do make jokes about. I feel like this team does have some potential to be a great organization if they can get the right partners and the right pieces all together. I think they do have a great future ahead of themselves, and I really hope that they do get an opportunity to run full-time, get better teams, better people, and maybe in the future, better organizations or better drivers in their organization race for them. We'll have to wait and see what happens, but I'm hoping that this team can make the jump going forward into next year. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Larson. Now, Corey LaJoie this past weekend said on the Door Bumper Clear podcast that Kyle Larson is expected to bring the Spring Phoenix car to the championship race for this upcoming race at Phoenix. Now, a lot of people are going to be really, really shocked by that, because didn't Kyle Larson finish 7th behind guys like Martinsville Jr. and Denny Hamlin in that race and finish near where Chase Elliott ended up finishing? That is very, very true. However, Kyle Larson's car was absolutely really, really fast in that race. You have to remember that in the race, I believe he had to start at the rear of the field before the green flag even began. And on top of that, I believe he had 2 speeding penalties in that race, and he still battled back to a top 10 finish. Kyle Larson also is a very, very good driver at Phoenix, and the 750 tracks have been pretty good for Kyle Larson. Not as good as he's been on the 550 tracks, but he's been pretty good on the 750 tracks, and I'm really not too worried about Kyle Larson going this weekend. He was really, really fast in Martinsville. He just had 2 speeding penalties that really cost him a great run and got damaged in a crash late in the event. He shouldn't have been back there to begin with. However, he did lead a lot of laps in the race at Martinsville, which really, really impressed me, even though I've been impressed with Kyle Larson all year. So I'm not entirely too worried about Kyle Larson coming up to this weekend. If he can come out of here with a really strong run, I think that'll be a good thing for the whole organization. If he can come out here with the championship, I think he is still the favorite to win the championship. We'll talk about that on the channel tomorrow. But I think it's really cool to see that Kyle Larson is going to bring this car. The car was really, really fast, so I don't expect Kyle Larson to have any major problems and have any major troubles going into this upcoming race. And there's also practice qualifying, and they've generally been one of the fastest cars when it comes to practice qualifying. They've generally qualified up front every single race and tend to run up front. They'll probably have some of the fastest cars out there. If they bring that speed this weekend, the same speed. And they've also, not to mention, probably been working on that car for probably since they had Martinsville race, that March race. And not to mention, the 5 team has only gotten better since that time in March. So we'll wait and see what happens. But I think that Kyle Larson will not have any trouble showing up some parts and showing up with some really, really great speed into this weekend. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Sage Karam. It was mentioned during the NASCAR on Fox broadcast for the Truck Series race at Martinsville that Sage Karam is looking to run full-time in stock cars and NASCAR in the 2022 season. Now, Sage Karam made his first career Truck Series debut, Truck Series start at Martinsville. He ended up finishing, I believe, in the top 25 or top 30. I think he had some issues late in the race that kind of cost him a really, really strong run. But we've been seeing Sage Karam get a lot more experience in NASCAR. He made his first career start in the Xfinity Series for Jordan Anderson Racing. He's ran for Jordan Anderson Racing in all of his starts so far in the NASCAR Xfinity Series and also in the Camping World Truck Series as well. And I think Sage Karam, he's come over from the IndyCar side of things. And I would not be shocked if he does go full-time NASCAR. I would not be entirely shocked if he does go over, at least run the Indianapolis 500 for Dreyer Reinbold Racing, or maybe another organization tries to pick him up. Maybe like Chip Ganassi Racing somehow tries to pick him up. But my big question is, where does he go for 2022 if he is going to run full-time? I think he's going to end up at Jordan Anderson Racing and Xfinity. He's made, like I said, he's been making all the starts in Xfinity and trucks for Jordan Anderson Racing. I think that's the organization that's going to pick him up. But I think that this shows that there has been a huge movement for IndyCar drivers that are having a hard time finding rides to come over to NASCAR. There's some talk about Marco Andretti potentially running with SHR and Xfinity in 2022. There's been talk, that Santino Ferrucci's ran a lot of times for the Sam Hunt Racing organization. Has been pretty impressive in his starts. I know he's caused some controversy on the track, but he's been pretty impressive in his select starts in the NASCAR Xfinity Series with that team. And you've had other drivers that have also been interested in coming over and running NASCAR. And even got F1 drivers like Daniel Ricciardo and even Danny Kvyat from the open wheel world side of things in F1 that have also been interested in maybe running in NASCAR. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens in regards to that. But I think if he does run full-time in Xfinity next year, I think he will drive for that team going into next year. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Andy Lally. As Andy Lally is going to be driving for Alpha Prime Racing in 2022 to run all 6 road course races in the number 44 car. The driver lineup so far that has been confirmed for this team, he'll be joining the drives of Roger Kroof, who will be driving some of the short track races next year. He'll be driving Martinsville, Richmond, and also Bristol. He also will see Tommy Joe Barnes run a lot of races next year as well. And also Cesar Baccarelli will run probably the other races. So it looks like that is going to be the team they're going to have. Andy Lally is an excellent and exceptional pickup to bring to the team next year. I think that he is an excellent and a very, very talented road course racer. He's driven some underfunded equipment in NASCAR, and honestly, I've been really, really impressed with what I've seen from Andy Lally on the racetrack. The guy knows how to get it done. He has not won an Xfinity Series race yet, or even a Cup Series race yet, but I think he's a driver that exactly knows how to get it done, and this team is aiming for top 15s and top 10s even. I think that Andy Lally could be a driver that could help this team out, become a very solid team, especially in the Xfinity Series program, on the road course side of things, and probably could teach some pointers to some of the young guns like a Roger Kroof, who probably go full-time with Alpha Prime. He could be a driver that could come in there and really help their organization going into next year. So we're going to have to wait and see what happens on Andy Lally is going to do, but I'm really excited about this. I think that Andy Lally is going to bring a lot to this team. I think it's really, really exciting for their organization. I'm really happy about this, and I'm glad to see that Andy Lally will be driving full at 6 races, six road course races for the team going into next year. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the 2022 Euro NASCAR Championship schedule that was officially revealed on Friday evening. So here's the schedule for the Euro NASCAR Championship. So the season is going to kick off in Germany. The first 2 races will happen on April 9th or 10th. Followed by Spain on May 14th and 15th. Then we'll go to United Kingdom on June 11th and 12th. Followed by, we'll have a summer all-star race. Then we'll race in the Czech Republic on September 3rd and 4th, probably in Prague. Then the next month later, we'll race in Belgium on October 8th and 9th. Then we'll go to Croatia on October 29th and 30th. And then we will end the season with the Winter Classic. And you guessed it, we will be racing on ice. The Whelen Euro, NASCAR Whelen Euro Series sometimes races in cold temperatures. And they'll be also racing on ice, which I think is absolutely exciting. And I think it is absolutely great for the series as a whole that they're going to be racing on ice. I'll tell you this, I will probably try to find a way to watch that race because I want to see an ice race. I've never seen an ice race before. I think it's exceptional that they're going to do that. And, you know, I think the Euro NASCAR series, they've got some drivers coming over from that. You got Luis Hesmans, who's going to be coming over from that series. You've had other drivers that have tried to come over, like Giorgio Magi over to the Cup Series, well, over to the Xfinity Series. And I think this is so cool, though, that the Euro NASCAR Championship looks like that. They're going to have an all-star race. Of course, every major series has an all-star race besides Xfinity trucks. But the fact that they're going to be racing on ice, that's the race I'm looking forward to. The schedule is absolutely really, really exciting. I'm looking forward to this. And I may catch some of those races next year. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the 2022 ARCA schedule that was officially revealed on Thursday afternoon. So here is the ARCA schedule for next year. So they will kick off at Daytona on February 19th, followed by Phoenix on March 11th. Then it'll be followed by Talladega on April 23rd, and then we'll go to Kansas on May 14th. We'll have 2 weeks. Then 2 weeks later, we'll go to Charlotte on May 8th, and then a couple weeks later, we'll head to Iowa on June 11th. I believe that will be an event that will happen with the IndyCar, because I think IndyCar is going to be happening around that time. Followed by a week later at Berlin Raceway. Then the next week, we'll head to Elk on June 25th. Then we'll head to Mid-Ohio on July 8th, which will be a companion event to the Truck Series race that will happen in Mid-Ohio. Then we'll go to Pocono on July 22nd, followed by Lucas Oil on July 29th, which I believe is on the same day as the Truck Series race. So you're probably going to have a Truck Series and ARCA doubleheader on the same day. Then we're going to go to Michigan on August 6th, and then a couple weeks later, we'll head to Watkins Glen on August 19th. Then we'll go to Springfield 2 days later on August 21st, and then we'll head to Milwaukee a week later on August 28th. Then we'll head to DuQuoin on September 4th, followed by Kansas on September 10th, followed by Bristol 5 days later on September 15th. Then we'll go to Salem October 1st, and then we'll finally kick off the end of the year at Toledo on October 8th. 20 races. This schedule, I think, looks really, really awesome. Now, I'm not sure what entirely is doing a schedule, because I think all these tracks have been on the schedule in the past. I think that they're returning to Lucas Oil. I don't remember if they raced at Lucas Oil Speedway last year. I really do like the schedule. You get a mix of different variety of tracks. Of course, you get your normal 1.5 mile, your 2 mile tracks. You get your bigger tracks for those drivers that are under the age of 18 that can't get the experience there. But you're going to also have those short tracks, so those drivers that are under 18 can get the experience. It is going to bring some challenges to those young drivers, even though the talent isn't as big in the ARCA series. It still is going to bring its challenges, and you're going to have challenges going into those events. So I'm really excited about this ARCA schedule. I really, really like it, and I'm looking forward to the 2022 ARCA season. I think, like I said, I like the schedule a lot. I think it's really, really cool. And this will be the first time that Toledo is ending the season, so I'm looking forward to it. And that is your ARCA schedule for 2022. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about RSS Racing. RSS Racing announced some major updates that are going to be coming to the team for 2022. CMR Construction will return for a third straight season to sponsor Ryan Sieg on a full-time basis. CMR Construction started sponsoring him in 2019, really on almost a full-time basis, though he had other sponsors that were working with that organization, but they will return for a third straight season. They will continue to be partnered with Roush Yates Engines going into next year, and on top of that, they have formed a technical alliance with Stewart-Haas Racing, and they plan to become a multi-car team in 2022. I think that second driver is going to be Kyle Sieg, so I think the driver lineup for next year is going to be Ryan Sieg, and also is going to be Kyle Sieg going into next year. But I think that this is really, really big for RSS Racing. You look at the team this year, they have been probably the most disappointing team, I think, of this year, because when they announced they were moving over from Chevy over to Ford, I think a lot of people thought that RSS Racing was going to be a playoff team and maybe was going to be able to win. But they've had some good runs this year, but for a team that moved over to Ford, I don't think that they have been that entirely impressive. They've not been really fast. They have shown some weaknesses, even though they've had some good runs this year. They've had a lot of races with mechanical problems, and I think it's been their transition from Chevy to Ford has been one of the big contributing factors to their struggles throughout this year. So I'm really excited about this, and RSS Racing is partnered up with SHR. I think it's going to help the team a lot more. I expect that this team will be a much bigger contender. I think they have a chance to make the playoffs next year, maybe with both of their cars, especially since some of the guys are going up to Cup. You've got Austin Cindric, Harrison Burton, they're jumping up the Cup, and also Justin Haley, who is jumping up the Cup next year. And you're not going to have, but you're still going to have depth in the series like Ty Gibbs will be running full-time, Josh Vera will be running full-time, and still your usual contenders that are going to be running next year. So I'm really excited about RSS Racing's upgrades, though. I think it's great for the organization. Like I said, I think the goal is to try to make the playoffs next year. If they can make it and return to the playoffs after not making it this year, I think that'll be great for the organization as a whole. Really excited about RSS Racing going forward. Excited to see that they're expanding next year, and I'm really happy about them for sure. Now we're going to move on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Kyle Busch talking to Bubba Wallace. Now, Kyle Busch was not very happy with Bubba Wallace at Kansas Speedway. Now, Kyle Busch did say to the media that he apologized to Bubba Wallace for his anger towards him. Kyle Busch said that you had a very good run. You're performing very awesome at Kansas. And he apologized for his anger due to the frustration that Kyle Busch had. Now, Kyle Busch is not having a really good day to begin with at Kansas. We all saw that Kyle Busch was not performing very well. He had gotten to the outside wall, but he had driven his way all the way up to about 10th or 12th. Then he started having a good battle with Bubba Wallace and basically started saying, oh my God, this kid. He was not happy with Bubba Wallace, and his anger was not really toward Bubba, but I think he was really frustrated that he couldn't get around Bubba Wallace, who is a Toyota affiliate. And of course, I think that's why Kyle Busch is frustrated, because he felt like that he should be performing better than Bubba Wallace is. But at the same time, then later in the race, he got he got into the outside wall, went multiple laps down. The fact that Kyle Busch went and apologized to Bubba Wallace for the actions, at least, is really good to see. I kind of expected that. It's good to see that Kyle Busch did apologize to him. It's great to see that drivers can apologize to each other and not have any major discourse to each other, because I think that the less discourse that a driver can have, the better it's going to be. So, really happy to see this story for sure play out in a really good light. I'm happy that Kyle Busch was able to apologize to Bubba Wallace for his anger toward him. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, is we're going to talk about Parker Kligerman versus Johnny Sauter. Now, Parker Kligerman was not very happy with Johnny Sauter at the conclusion of the race. So, during the race, Parker Kligerman and Johnny Sauter got into it. I think around 50-60 laps ago, Johnny Sauter got into the back of Parker Kligerman. Parker Kligerman then retaliated on Johnny Sauter and turned him, I believe, going into turn number 1. And I respect Parker Kligerman for that. Now, Parker Kligerman had other issues with drivers of the race. I think he had contact with Haley Deegan, which unfortunately cut her tire down, which that really sucked, as Haley was trying to get some experience and was staying on the lead lap at that time, but a tire went down for her. Parker Kligerman then responded to the media saying that he has a lot of respect for Johnny Sauter, but won't take getting dumped and won't take it. And he also talked about the aggression of the truck series. He said it doesn't matter if a young driver or an older driver. It seems like the aggression between these young and older drivers has been a major problem in the truck series. Now, I entirely agree with Parker Kligerman. Parker Kligerman, I think, is a driver that generally is really, really clean. He says he's raced against Johnny Sauter for a very, very long time. So he's back in 2011. And like I said, he had a ton of respect for Johnny Sauter. He has nothing against him. But at the same time, I think he understands. I understand where he's coming from in the situation. Parker's trying to get as good of a finish as he can. Johnny Sauter's not competing for a championship. And it seems like in the truck series right now, it's a problem. We'll talk more about this story, but I think it's really cool to see the Elite. Well, it's not cool, but I'm happy to see that Parker is going to stand up for himself. Parker's not going to take any of it, and I'm happy to see that for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about John Hunter Nemechek and his issues with Austin Wayne Self. Now, there was some pitch strategy earlier in the race that got John Hunter Nemechek far back. John Hunter Nemechek actually got ran up almost out to the wall, and Austin Wayne Self was on the inside. He made a really, really bad move and kind of made a move that pushed John Hunter up, and John Hunter lost a lot of spots. John Nemechek was trying to move his way back up to the front. John Hunter had basically gotten quite a few points in the race. He was staying out to try to get enough points and lost a lot of track position at conclusion of stage number 2. John Hunter basically tried to attempt to make a bold move down to the inside. In my opinion, that was really not the smartest play considering you're trying to get enough points. But Austin himself basically retaliated against John Hunter Nemechek by basically turning him down the straightaway hard into the outside wall. And John Hunter Nemechek was not very happy in his post-race interview, saying that Austin himself does not apparently care about the championship at all and really does not care. Austin himself kind of made up a bullshit excuse. He says that it was unintentional what he did. He said it's Martinsville racing, and he was in the same position as John Hunter Nemechek at that time. I want to say this to Austin himself. Austin himself is a complete idiot for that move. The fact I don't understand why you would dump John Hunter Nemechek. I agree that what John Hunter Nemechek did at that point was a little bit egregious. He probably shouldn't have done what he did there, making that bold move. But at the same time, Austin himself should know what's going on with the championship picture. I would understand maybe giving a bump to John Hunter. I wouldn't be frustrated about that. I don't think a lot of people would be frustrated about that. I think the reason that a lot of people are upset and mad at Austin Wayne Self in particular is because the dude literally dumped him down the straightaway. I mean, there is no excuse for that kind of shit. You don't ever, in my opinion, you don't ever dump somebody down the straightaway into the outside wall right rear them down the straightaway. That is absolutely unexcusable, and John Nemechek has a right to be upset and has a right to be mad about that. I don't blame him for being really mad about that. And I hope that something changes between these guys. Because, again, the Truck Series has a problem with drivers not caring and stuff. And I'm glad that John Nemechek stood up for himself. I don't think that John Nemechek's in the wrong. I think Austin himself has been a problem in the Truck Series. I had some comments against Bubba Wallace in the past. They said that Bubba Wallace is in the wrong. The dude basically, I remember, I think it was 2 years ago, where he basically got suspended by NASCAR for basically, I think, doing drugs or something. He got suspended a couple years ago. I just don't think Austin himself really cares. He has his dad basically help him fund the organization. He's gotten there because of daddy's money, and I understand John Hunter's frustration. John Nemechek's trying to race for a championship, and it seems like Austin himself doesn't care, and that's really frustrating because it's a big, big problem, and I think it's a big issue, and I'm glad to see that, at least for that instance, John Nemechek stood out for it, and it's something that needs to change. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Theo regression in the Truck Series. Now, after the Truck Series race, because of all the chaos and frustration, there was a lot of drivers that were very unhappy about the racing product that happened out there. You had multiple other drivers that were mad at each other. You had Trip Bruce that was mad at Matt Crafton's crew chief, Junior Joyner. Multiple pick members in that team weren't very happy. Matt Crafton really didn't know what was going on at the time. You had Todd Gillen that was not mad at Stuart Friesen because Todd Gillen got dumped by Stuart Friesen. You had other wrecks that were happening that were absolutely egregious. You had a big one that happened on the front stretch, and a lot of it was just the over-aggression of the drivers. And multiple drivers made some responses in regards to this. Matt Crafton says that drivers need to get their asses kicked, and people need to get their busted in the mouth and get their asses beat for the craziness that happened out there and the crazy problems. John Hunter Nemechek responded and says that NASCAR needs to step in situations like Austin Wayne Self, and they need to step in. In my opinion, the over-aggression in the Truck Series, and this is something that has been happening more in NASCAR as a whole with all the craziness out of the drivers, it's been a bigger issue with the whole driver landscape. Ever since over the last 10 years, and it really started a few years ago, there has been more aggression in NASCAR. And a lot of it, I do think it is infected by the playoff format where drivers just go and go. But a lot of drivers coming up through the ranks, they are some of the biggest problems. Now, there are older drivers that cause problems. Stuart Friesen has some issues where he basically, like I said, got into him. And other older drivers getting into wrecks like Johnny Sauter, who got into Parker Kligerman, Parker retaliated, which I was in the right. But at the same time, it's a lot of younger drivers. A lot of younger drivers race more like Joey Logano's than they do Mark Martins. There's not that mixture right there where you can be a little bit aggressive but also can hold back. And it's something that we've been seeing in the Cup Series too, but in the Truck Series especially, it has been a problem. You've had a lot of drivers that have gotten way too aggressive in the Truck Series, and it's something that overall has to change in the Truck Series sooner or later. I think that the team owners are the big thing that need to step in. They're going to be the ones that I think have to make the decision. Force these guys to work on the cars. We see Todd Gillen work on the cars. Usually he's one of the more clean drivers out there because I think he knows that he has to work on the cars. We see John Hunter Nemechek work on the cars. Yes, he's aggressive, but at the same time, he's a guy that does work on his cars. I think these drivers that are younger need to be able to work on the cars, and the team owners need to hold these younger drivers accountable. Or there needs to be something done about it. Maybe not hire all these aggressive young kids coming up. A lot of these hotshot young kids, they're very, very talented. There's no doubt about that. But one of the big problems right now in the Truck Series is it's just over-aggression over and over again. And it's something that has to change in the Truck Series because it's not just this weekend at Martinsville. Because if it's just the short tracks, I totally understand. But we've seen it at Darlington big wrecks. We saw it at Knoxville where it was a major, major issue. And it's something that has to change very, very soon. I don't want NASCAR to start acting like the FIA and stepping in and officiating everything. But I also want to start seeing these team owners getting involved and stopping the over-aggression because it has been a big problem. And it's something that has to change over time because if it doesn't change, things are going to be a major problem. So hopefully we'll see some changes in regards to this and hopefully something will happen really, really soon. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Parker Kligerman. Now, it was reported on the Door Bumper Clear podcast that Parker Kligerman was slated to drive the second RCR car in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2022, but the deal fell through and they decided to go with the driver we'll talk about here in just a second. I'd rather see, honestly, the guy that they're getting I like a lot, but I think that Parker Kligerman would have been an excellent acquisition for Richard Childress Racing. I think that Parker Kligerman really proved it, and I think he's proved it over time in the Truck Series this year when he's driven for Chris Cormier's organization. But I think that what Parker Kligerman has done is absolutely impressive. He got a top 20 with Gaunt Brothers Racing, and not to mention that car isn't very fast. He ran top 15 most of the day, and of course, like I said, he finished 20th, but he ran top 15 and top 20 all day long and was really impressive, and he finished 6th. Despite all the craziness in the Truck Series, he ended up finishing 6th in the race. So I think that he would have absolutely been an excellent driver that they could have gone and chosen for a full-time basis. But I guess sponsorship is the major reason, which I hate that sponsors are really the big affiliated reason why a driver can't continue their career in a series. I think Parker Kligerman deserves a really good opportunity. Where is that? I don't entirely know, but maybe he goes to Tory Racing and Trucks, but I'll be honest, I think that's either going to be Tyler Ickram or Corey Heim. I think it's more like a Corey Heim, but Tyler Ickram does have sponsorship fronting from Lee Iwata, who probably could help him go to that ride next year. So we'll have to wait and see what happens. But again, I want to see Parker Kligerman in a good ride. The dude absolutely deserves it. And I hope that a team that is watching these channels, these people saying this stuff, get Parker Kligerman a ride. He absolutely deserves it. And I want to see him in a really good ride next year. I think it'll be awesome and great for the sport if a driver like Parker Kligerman can get an opportunity to get into a really good ride next year. I think that would be really, really awesome. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Zane Smith. Now, Zane Smith says he has not been told that he is not going to be back at GMS Racing in 2022. He also says and acknowledges that the business in NASCAR is currently tough at the moment. Now, Zane Smith's future in NASCAR is really uncertain at the moment. We really don't know what's going on with Zane Smith. GMS Racing is expected to downsize the 3-car truck operation next year. There's 2 drivers that already been confirmed. You're going to have Jack Wood in the 24 and Grant Enfinger in the 23. Now, this 3rd car has not been currently announced at the moment, but it's most likely that Chase Burton is going to go into that ride. Now, things may change because Zane Smith did just get into the championship with his win this past weekend at Martinsville. However, I think that his future really is unknown because sponsorship is the big problem for Zane Smith. Now, he does have some sponsorship from Michael Roberts Construction. That's probably going to help him a little bit get an opportunity to get into a really, really good ride. But honestly, I really don't know what happens for Zane Smith's future. I don't know where he goes. Maybe he goes to College Racing in the Xfinity Series, but let's be honest here, that ride's probably going to end up going to Maya Snyder. Maybe goes to another organization in trust. Who really knows? But I want to see Zane Smith get an opportunity to go on a good ride. I know this year hasn't been as good for him as it was last year. He was able to make the championship for. Maybe GMS changes their mind and they take him again next year. And honestly, I think the GMS should take him over Chase Burton. I think he would have 3 good drivers. Grant Enfinger could be a good mentor for Jack Wood. And Zane Smith could probably improve next year. And I think one of the biggest reasons why they've struggled, the whole organization, is because they've got too many trucks. I think with only 3 trucks being there, their organization is going to be better. So I really do hope that Zane Smith gets an opportunity to have a good ride next year. Hope he returns to GMS Racing, but his future is very, very murky at the moment, and we really don't know what the future of Zane Smith is going to look like going into next year. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the LA Clash and the Coliseum. It was reported by Adam Stern on Friday night that NASCAR is looking at the Coliseum's Clash as a chance to try new stuff from a marketing experience perspective. Per Ben Kennedy, it's an opportunity for us to take a step back and ask ourselves, what does the next gen weekend look like from a live event experience and standpoint? I think Ben Kennedy is on point and on the money with this. And one thing I've really liked about the newer leadership, while I don't agree with everything that the leadership has said, one thing I've really liked about them is at least they're able to go out there and try new things. When you have Brian France running NASCAR, NASCAR really would not try everything, and he basically signed a 5-year contract with the tracks. But NASCAR has been looking, and they've been now they're starting to be serious about cutting back on tracks that don't bring in a lot of attendance and a lot of fans into the tracks. And I think NASCAR is looking at events like LA to get into those markets. And other markets, too, there's talk about going to Chicago for a Chicago Street Course. There's talk about going to New York, maybe racing in the Meadowlands. Maybe talk about Cup, maybe going up to Portland one day. There's talk about other regions outside of the country that they're looking to in the next 10 years. But I think racing in the legendary LA Memorial Coliseum is absolutely incredible. And the fact that they are actually going to run at this track is very, very awesome. They had a tire test in Bowman Gray Stadium. All the drivers that were there, Tony Stewart, Dale Jr., Clint Boyer, said it was really, really good. They enjoyed it. And we'll see this car race the LA Clash, and I'm really excited. Now, they are not racing. They're going to be racing there February 6th, which actually is 3 months from now. They got to get the track prepared soon. And the football season for them doesn't end, I think, till the end of December. So it's going to be really, really stretched to get the event ready because it won't be ready till after Christmas. But at the same time, I really like that NASCAR is able to try new things, try out new markets, and I think it's really, really exciting from a whole perspective. I think it's a great thing that they are trying new things and trying new perspectives, and it's really awesome for sure. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the Martinsville TV ratings from this past weekend at Martinsville. According to Adam Stern, Martinsville earned a 1.61 rating and 2.62 million viewers for Sunday's Xfinity 500, which is down slightly from last year's race, which had 2.71 million in viewers. Now, you did have some big games going on at the time. You had the NFL, which had some pretty big, important games going at the time. And I think NHL was also going on at the time, which took some viewership from that event, which I think did affect it a little bit. Now, the ratings only being down very, very slightly, but also these have been the best ratings over the last couple of weeks, which is a good thing. Now, there is probably going to be more media exposure for the Phoenix race due to all the controversy, which there's a lot to talk about from that. But I think it is really exciting as a whole. At least, well, it's not exciting to see ratings definitely down. But at the same time, I do think at least it's great to see that it wasn't down too much. The fact that we are not going to end the year on a major, major decline, and we're only going to on a very slight decline most likely, is not really the end of the world in all things. And the fact that, like I said, we're not down by that much isn't really the end of the world to me. Only being down by like maybe 100,000 viewers isn't too bad, especially with all these big events going on. So those are the ratings for Martinsville. They're not too bad. Hopefully the ratings will be up for the championship, though. I wouldn't be entirely shocked if they're down because people don't really like a one championship race. So you still have some fan favorites like Chase Elliott and Kyle Larson are two of the favorites in Cup right now, who are really, really popular in theirs. So those are the ratings from Martinsville. Hopefully Phoenix is up, but let's be honest, I'm not expecting Phoenix to have great ratings going into there. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about Denny Hamlin and his comments against Chase Elliott. Now, Denny Hamlin says him getting booed after a lot of fans booed Denny Hamlin during his post-race interview against Alex Bowman. And Denny Hamlin says him getting booed are Chase Elliott fans. Says it does not bother him. Then Chase Elliott responded sarcastically, says he will lose too much sleep over this on Sunday. Now, Denny Hamlin is not entirely wrong when he says that Chase Elliott fans are kind of ruthless. Chase Elliott fans have had problems. There are people that were at the Cup race that probably could tell you that there were issues with those drivers and issues with fans booing him. I heard the Chase Elliott fans were flipping off anytime that he got passed. When Kyle Larson passed, they were flipping him off. When Bubba Wallace by Bubba Wallace, they were flipping off. Anytime Bubba Wallace came by, they were flipping off Bubba, and it's a major, major problem. They also said that a lot of them were vaping and stuff at the racetrack. And that is a major problem. And I think it's just in general, you have a lot of bad apples coming from those specific camps. And it is a little bit of a major, major issue and a major, major problem when you do overall have those problems with those Chase Elliott fans. Again, I think the Chase Elliott fandom has had a lot of bad apples. It's a lot of the bad Jeff Gordon fans, a lot of Dale Jr. fans. Now, of course, there are good Chase Elliott fans like myself. I think I'm a pretty big, good Chase Elliott fan who can basically call all the bad Chase Elliott fans. And I think we need to do better as a fan base, regardless of which fan base you're part of. I think we need to do better as an organization and a fan base for the future of the sport. So Denny Hamlin's not entirely wrong when he says that, and I guess it is what it is. And at least Denny Hamlin was pretty dry sense of humor after the race. He wasn't very happy after the race. We'll talk about his frustration with Alex Bowman here in a little bit finally, but definitely very interesting as a whole. And Denny Hamlin being frustrated, I don't entirely blame him, to be honest with you. We're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about some next-gen news. As was announced by NASCAR, NASCAR has announced some tweaks to the next-gen front and rear clips a few weeks ago, so there is more deformation in the chassis spread through a crash. NASCAR conducted a crash test at Talladega to gather data and make sure no unintended issues were found earlier this week at Talladega. About a week ago, actually, they did a test at Talladega. There have been some concerns about the testing. That, remember, there have been rumors and reports a few months ago that there have been rumors of the crash test dummy had died in the crash, though NASCAR said that there were no issues with that test. Definitely very interesting as a whole that NASCAR did another test. Again, teams have been talking about the crush panels. Apparently, crush panels have been having issues with those next-gen tests, though NASCAR said, they had not found any issues in regards to that. So it's definitely a really, really interesting story we're going to have to follow. There are other safety concerns that if NASCAR probably should be trying to fix. Some of the heating problems and concerns due to the exhaust pipes. There's been some heating issues inside the race cars, and hopefully NASCAR will find a way to fix more of these issues going forward in some upcoming tests. They'll probably go back to where they do their testing and all the other stuff coming up very, very soon. Again, with COVID delaying stuff, NASCAR couldn't do those tests inside those facilities, so NASCAR had to have some of their conducted tests out in other specific areas that we didn't really know. So we'll see more about those information. We'll probably have more information that will come out very, very soon about this, but this is definitely really, really interesting, and we'll probably find out some more about this very, very soon from NASCAR. NASCAR will probably let the teams know what is going on in regards to that, hoping NASCAR is being more vocal and talking to the teams more than they were a few months ago when the rumors started. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Austin Hill. As Austin Hill is going to be joining Richard Childress Racing in the NASCAR Xfinity Series in 2022. Number of crew chief of sponsors have not been announced for Austin Hill. However, I do think United Rentals will probably be sponsoring Austin Hill in the NASCAR Xfinity Series next year. Austin Hill is joining Sheldon Creed, who won last year's Truck Series Championship. And I think both drivers on that team, you have a really, really good combination going into next year. Both drivers have been really, really strong in the NASCAR Camp World Truck Series throughout their careers. Austin Hill, of course, I believe he's won 10 Truck Series races. He's gotten a couple wins this year. Of course, winning at Knoxville and also winning at Watkins Glen earlier this year. Lightning did help Austin Hill get an opportunity to win that race. But Austin Hill did absolutely, it deserves this ride in the NASCAR Xfinity Series. It was announced a few months ago that he would not be returning to the NASCAR Xfinity Series, and he would be trying to move up to the NASCAR Xfinity Series. And now that he's able to go up to Xfinity and work with RCR, a great team, you've got a good, probably the most underrated combination next year. Because like I said, I think both drivers are really, really good. I think that Austin Hill could be an underdog for the championship next year. Now, of course, he'll be competing against his teammate like Sheldon Creed. He'll be competing against guys like Ty Gibbs, Josh Berry, Noah Gragson next year, Justin Allgaier, AJ Allmendinger, Daniel Hemrick. He'll be competing against all those guys next year, and he's racing against those guys throughout his entire career. But to me, I think that he's going to be a really, really good asset and good for the team. And I'm happy to see this for sure, that he will be driving full-time for the next year. Really, really exciting about it for the Xfinity. He's like I said, he's a fantastic acquisition for the team. I think he's going to bring a lot of insight to the table going into next year, and I'm really excited about this for sure, that he will be running full-time in the NASCAR Xfinity Series with RCR. Really happy that he'll be running full-time. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Matt McCall. As Matt McCall is expected to be named crew chief for Brad Keselowski in 2022 in the 6 car. Now, a lot of people, including myself, are a little bit shocked that he is expected to become the crew chief for him. Now, it had been reported a few weeks ago back at Talladega that it was expected that he was going to end up being the crew chief for Brad Keselowski, which is a little bit shocking because I think a lot of us thought that he was going to be the crew chief for Kurt Busch going over to 2311 Racing. And Denny Hamlin said that Kurt Busch is going to have a person that Kurt Busch is really, really comfortable with working with him going into next year. But I think Matt McCall is a very, very good crew chief that is going to be working with Brad Keselowski next year. I think he's going to bring a lot. I think ever since he started working with Kurt Busch, I think Matt McCall has become a good crew chief. And he was pretty good with Jamie McMurray when he crew chiefed, though the last year that Jamie McMurray was in that one car, they weren't that good. But I think that Jamie McMurray wasn't really performing as well because he knew he was going to be retiring and going more into working in the Fox Sports booth in 2019. I think Matt McCall is going to bring a lot to the table for the team next year. I think he's going to help out Brad Keselowski. I think that Roush has been picking up a lot of parts and pieces. They've been picking up a lot of big moves. And remember, they moved Jimmy Fenning into the engineering side of things. They've also got Brad Keselowski's guy who's worked with them. And now he's going to have a good crew chief work with them. This could be, for at least the Cup Series-wise, the most underrated combination. Matt McCall's done pretty good on super speedways and crew chief side of things, and I think that's where Brad Keselowski next year is going to gel. You're going to have two really good people working together. It's great for the series. My question is, who is going to work at Kurt Busch next year? Maybe Tony Gibson comes out of retirement, because I think he's been working in the, well, I don't know what Tony Gibson's been doing, but maybe Tony Gibson, maybe Booty Barker moves away from Bubba and goes over to Kurt. But let's be honest, I think Booty Barker is going to remain with Bubba next year. Maybe they get some other old crew chiefs out that we really don't know. Maybe Pat Tryson comes out of retirement for all we know. I don't know who's going to be the crew chief next year. Maybe Cole Pearn. Cole Pearn's been back in NASCAR recently to Charles Roval. He was fighting for Martin Truex Jr. Maybe Cole Pearn comes out of retirement and works Kurt Busch. And I know that Cole Pearn was with Furniture Racing in 2013 on the engineering side of things before he jumped up in the crew chief side of things. So maybe it's going to be Cole Pearn, but we'll have to wait and see what happens. But the fact that Matt McCall is going to be the crew chief for Brad Keselowski next year is definitely really, really interesting, and we'll have to wait and see what happens. As I'm currently updating today's video, it looks like that the crew chief for Kurt Busch is actually going to be Billy Scott. And in response to Zach Sturionato, Jenna Fryer says that Billy Scott, it looks like, is going to be the crew chief for Kurt Busch in 2022 at 2311 Racing. Now, apparently, Billy Scott does have a win with Kurt Busch, so that's definitely really interesting. So with Matt McCall leaving, going over to Roush, it looks like there's going to be addition with Billy Scott going into the team next year. I'm very intrigued because Billy Scott, the last time I remember what he was doing, he was at RSR. So we'll see more come out about this really, really soon. That's probably going to be announced in the near future, and it looks like it's going to be Billy Scott who will be working with Kurt Busch going into next season. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about the start times that were revealed for the Cup Series. I'll acknowledge the Truck Series and Xfinity Series. There are some changes for the Xfinity Series. Martinsville is going to be on NBC. There's not too many races that are going to be on NBC or Fox. I believe Talladega for Xfinity is going to be on Fox. I think that's the only race for Xfinity that's going to be on Fox, and then you're going to have a few most of the races go to USA Network, which we'll talk about USA Network here in a second in regards to NBCSN. But there are some big changes for that. NBC for Martinsville, but for every reason, the season finale. And all the Truck Series races are going to be on FS1. Usually they tend to have one race on Fox, and usually that's Talladega. But that's not going to be the thing for next year. But there's some big changes. Now let's look at the Cup Series starting lineup. So for the Clash, that on the LA Memorial Coliseum, you think that would be on Fox, but they're going to be putting that on Fox Sports 1 at 8 p.m. Eastern. I personally think that it should be on Fox. I don't know why it's not on Fox. I think it would be a much better decision for them to put that on Fox, but that will be on FS1. Followed by the duels at 7 p.m. on Fox Sports 1. Then you have 7 or 8 straight races that are going to be on Fox. Daytona 500 at 2:30 p.m. Eastern. Then Auto Club at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Then Las Vegas will happen at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. Atlanta will happen at 3 p.m. Eastern. COTA will be on Fox instead of FS1 at 3:30 p.m. Eastern. And then Richmond will be at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on Fox. And then Martinsville, shockingly, no surprise, will be at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on Fox Sports 1. Then the next 2 weeks, Bristol Dirt, which is actually going to be a night race this year, will be at 7 p.m. Eastern on Fox, followed by Talladega at 3 p.m. Eastern on Fox. Then the next 2 weeks you'll have on Fox Sports 1, Dover at 3 p.m. Eastern, Darlington at 3:30 p.m. Eastern, Kansas 3 p.m. Eastern, and then the All-Star race will be at 8 p.m. Eastern. Followed by the Coca-Cola 600 at 6 p.m. Eastern. Then a Worldwide Technology race, the race that I'm going to be going to next year, is at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on Fox Sports 1. Then Sonoma, the final race on FS1, will be at 4 p.m. Eastern. Then the season for NBC is going to kick off. They will have Nashville at 5 p.m. Eastern on NBC. Then the next year will be on USA Network. Atlanta will be at 3 p.m. Eastern. New Hampshire will be at 3 p.m. Eastern on USA. And then Pocono will also be at 3 p.m. Eastern. So for those 3 races, it'll be very, very normal on what those times. Then they will go to Indianapolis Road Course. And instead of happening at 1 p.m. Eastern, that's going to be pushed back to a 2:30 p.m. Eastern start time on NBC. Then the next week, we'll go to Michigan at 3 p.m. Eastern on USA. And then we'll have Richmond and Waukesha also at 3 p.m. Eastern on USA. I don't understand why Richmond is not a race that's going to be happening on main NBC. I just don't understand why that race is in the daytime. That race should be in the nighttime, but that's just my honest opinion. Then Daytona will be at 7 p.m. Eastern for the cutoff race on NBC. Then the next 4 weeks will be during the first 4 races of playoffs will be on NBC, will be on USA. Darlington, the Southern 500, which should be on NBC, will be on USA. Then Kansas will be at 3 p.m. Eastern on USA. Then Bristol will be at 7:30 p.m. Eastern on USA. And then Texas will be at 3:30 p.m. Eastern on USA. Then the final 6 races, all 6 races will be on NBC. So Talladega 2 p.m. Eastern, Roval 2 p.m. Eastern, Las Vegas 2:30 p.m. Eastern, Homestead 2:30 p.m. Eastern, Martinsville 2 p.m. Eastern, and then Phoenix will end the season at 3 p.m. Eastern. So here are the big takeaways. Las Vegas happening on NBC at 2:30 p.m. Eastern in the afternoon. That is going to be an 11:30 start time for the West Coast. So it's going to be early, and I don't understand why it's that early. I think it should be a little bit later than that, especially for the West Coast side of things. But it is what it is. That's going to be early. Also, I noticed that Nashville is starting at 5 p.m. Eastern. That's definitely really, really intriguing, considering that race, I think one of the big reasons is because of the traffic concerns. They want to get everybody in. But a later start time for Nashville is definitely really, really surprising. Other big notes, Bristol Dirt happening 7 p.m. Eastern. I think that's a really, really good move. And finally, the Clash happening in LA Memorial Coliseum, 8 p.m. Eastern. That needs to be on at Fox. I don't understand why they couldn't put that on Fox. You could have taken a race from like maybe Michigan, maybe like Richmond or Atlanta and put that on at Fox. Just my opinion. That would have made that bet much, much bigger and it would have helped the season out much, much more. But that's your schedule. And another thing, the Daytona 500 needs to be earlier than 2:30 Eastern. I think they actually moved that a little bit earlier this year. I think that race originally, did they move that earlier? I don't remember. But they're having it at 2:30 p.m. Eastern, maybe a little bit earlier, maybe 2 p.m. Eastern would have been much, much better to avoid potential rain concerns. But those are the starting lines for the Cup Series. Not surprised they're later start times. NASCAR says it's better to have them later than earlier. So that's definitely really interesting as a whole and a major, major story that developed that has come out. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Kyle Busch. As Kyle Busch is going to be required to complete sensitivity training before the start of the 2022 season as a result of the language used during a post-race interview. Now, Kyle Busch did apologize for using this slur. Kyle Busch cited a slur that should not be used. He basically said Brad Keselowski is basically a word. I'm just going to say stupid, but I'm not going to say the entire word because that word is very, very wrong. Now, Kyle Busch was really, really frustrated in his post-race interview and got very mad at Brad Keselowski. Now, like I said, he did apologize for using that word. He says there's no excuse, especially to say that in society nowadays. Now, I think saying that word is absolutely wrong. I will say that I don't think Kyle Busch intentionally meant to do it. I think that what Kyle Busch was just frustrated at the time and didn't really know what to say. But I think NASCAR is doing a good job by keeping it consistent. They actually had Hailie Deegan also go through sensitivity training last year. So that's why I think NASCAR decided to go ahead and penalize Kyle Busch and make him go through sensitivity training before the beginning of the 2022 season. And I think that it should be something that should not be said. Hailie Deegan said that that training that she went through, which was a little bit intense, she did say that that training made her think about things more and made her a much better person as a whole. So to me, I'm really glad that Kyle Busch kept this. Again, Kyle Busch getting a penalty. Kyle Busch has had points this year where he's been really, really frustrated. I mean, his frustration above Wallace we talked about really early in this episode. And then, of course, his frustration going through and getting penalized. NASCAR, Kyle Busch has just had a lot of things get to him this year. The frustration's been building throughout the year. I think he was just mad at Brad Keselowski because they were battling really, really hard for second position. They had contact after the race. And he was really, really frustrated at the time. And again, I think NASCAR being consistent about it is a great thing, and I'm at least happy that NASCAR kept their consistency. That word should never be used, just like the other really, really best, or the Kyle Larson said, should not be used. I'm glad that they're making forced to go sensitivity training. I don't think any fines should be forced on Kyle Busch, but I think making him go through that sensitivity training, especially for that word they use, is absolutely wrong. And I'm glad NASCAR was really consistent with that. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about NASCAR's charter system. It was reported earlier today by Adam Stern that, according to him, the next NASCAR charters that are sold are expected to go for at least $12 million per people familiar, which is around a 100% increase from just last year when they were just closer to $6 million each for a charter. That is an absolutely huge increase. And I think a lot of it is because of the amount of money that is wanting to be sold. We have been told that Kaulig Racing may have spent up to $10 million for each chart, and Trackhouse Racing may have spent close to $20 million each, just not to buy the charters, but also buy the team organization. But the fact that the charter system has increased that much in a specific amount of time, the fact that it's increased all the way up to $12 million is absolutely insanity, and it's absolutely insane how much money is going into these charters. You wouldn't think that these charters would cost that much, and while the next gen car is supposed to be cheaper long run, this is something that's going to affect that. And the fact, like I said, the fact that charters are going to cost that much going into next year, and again, it's going to hurt the trains trying to get into the series. Ricker Racing is probably selling it. Ricker probably wants at least $10 million for his, probably wants $15 million for his charters, and it's just going to increase the asking price. And what it's going to do while the next car is supposed to be cheaper, it's going to affect teams that are going to try to get into NASCAR, and it's going to hurt the market in the long run. And I think it will have major effects on the market. I really, really do. I think it will have major, major effects on the market, and I will think it will hurt things as a whole going forward for the market. So it's definitely frustrating as a whole that it's going to cost that much per charter. I don't think it should cost that much per charter. But again, it wouldn't be a big problem if open teams would get paid out the same amount as the charter teams. The problem is the open teams, it costs those teams, they only get 1% of what they got to use. You only used to get like 10 for 15%. Then NASCAR took away a lot of their earnings, and they only get 1% of that, which is why you see teams like JT Doherty Racing, they've downsized to one-car operation next year. And you don't see a lot of open teams showing up. And that's one thing. While the next-gen cars, like I said, supposed to be cheaper, this is going to hurt that. And it's just a big thing with the business. And Dale Jr. did say that it was probably worth $10 million what Kaulig spent. And that's one reason why Junior Motorsports did not jump up the cup. But it's going to hurt things. And you see frustration from teams. You look at 2311 Racing, which is why I think they're trying to get a charter. But at the same time, the fact, and that's one thing, you're seeing growing frustration. Now, the charter system could go away after 2024. It's definitely very, very possible. But at the same time, the fact that it's going to cost that much to get charters going into next year, That's absolutely ridiculous, insane. And it's something that it has major long-term effects going into the future. Because, again, you may not see as many teams showing up. You may only see at points 36 cars enter, which is like, of course, F1 has 20 cars on their field, but there's talk maybe they could expand in the future. But it's definitely very, very interesting and also frustrating at the same time, and the frustrating parts about the charter system. But it is what it is, and we'll have to wait and see what happens about the charter system going forward. And now we're going to jump on to the next major story of today's episode, as we're going to talk about NBCSN and USA Network. Now, last year we talked about how the NBCSN was expected to shut down. We had not really gotten major updates until today. So, it was announced today that NBC Sport Network is going to be shutting down on December 31st. All Xfinity Series and Cup races that are on NBCSN will be moving to USA Network. All premier games will, from soccer, things that are moving from the NBC network are going to be NBC Sports Network, are going to be like MotoGP is going to be moving from there. You're going to have IMSA moving over there. You're going to have 2 IndyCar races on USA Network. This is a big, big move, and this is something that needs to be talked about. Now, of course, you have NBC with IndyCar. IndyCar already announced their schedule for next year. Basically, of course, majority races are going to NBC. You do have one race that is going on Peacock, but that race may be in jeopardy of even happening next year. So that's definitely really, really big right there. But why is this a huge deal? Because NBCSN, I think at the time when they made the contract for NASCAR, I think at the time no one really thought that NASCAR at the time was going to have a chance of this being happening. I think NASCAR currently is stuck in a box where they can't get out of a contract right now, where they're stuck till 2024. Now, the good news is for all you fans, no races are going to be on Peacock on the main. Now, you're probably going to see some of the broadcasting, like the Dale Jr. download is probably going to go on there. All those things like Dirty Mo Media stuff is probably going to go on there. Motor Mouse, all the big shows we're going to probably end up on there. And also probably NASCAR and NBC's big show that they do is probably going to end up on there. Countdown to Green is probably going to end up on there, some of it. And also pre-race stuff, post-race stuff is going to end up on there as well. I think a lot of people need to be talking about this more because it has a lot of major factors going into next year. And again, USA Network talk about this. USA Network does have a much bigger reach, as like, I think 10 million more households that have it. I think it's the 12th most of any major viewers. The problem is not enough people are able to get it, and a lot of people don't even know about USA Network. Now, with this announcement today, it's going to give enough people time because at least for people on the NASCAR side of things, it does give enough time because, again, the season for NASCAR on NBC side of things doesn't start, I believe, till June 26th, so it is a little bit earlier. So they're going to have some time to get the season rolling, get enough people to go over there. And on January 1st, the people at NBC are going to give major notices out. But it's definitely something that we're going to have to keep tabs on and something that we're going to have to keep watch on going forward. But it's definitely a major story we need to talk about, and I'm glad at least that they can give it to us. And again, they're shutting, again, we expected this to happen. We expected NASCAR, that we expected NBCSN, that they were going to shut down. NASCAR's in a box right now. They couldn't do anything about it, but they're going to move their stuff to USA Network. Practice qualifying, you probably will see some of that on Track Pass, and we're already seeing qualifying for the final Xfinity Truck Cup qualifying, are going to be on Track Pass. You'll probably see practice qualifying on Track Pass, but also some of the stuff will probably go to Peacock, which is really unfortunate at points too, but at the same time, it's definitely a major change. That is the news on NBCSN, and their changes going into next year. It's really big and huge news. And finally, we're going to talk about the big story between Denny Hamlin and Alex Bowman. Now, Denny Hamlin was not very happy with Alex Bowman, so they were having a very good battle for the win in the Cup Series race. Denny Hamlin, Alex Bowman kind of made a little bit of a dirty move on Denny Hamlin early in the restart. Alex Bowman lets Denny Hamlin go by with 18 laps to go. Then there's a really good battle for the win. It's very clean. Then Alex Bowman oversets with 7 laps to go and gets into Denny Hamlin and turns him battling for the win. Then Alex Bowman goes on to win the race, and Denny Hamlin basically interrupts Alex Bowman's burnout and was basically doing single burnouts. They were basically in front of each other. They weren't very happy. Bowman then had a post-race interview with NASCAR and NBC, and he says that he didn't intentionally wreck Denny Hamlin. They were going for the win. He said he gave the place back. He never wants to intentionally wreck anybody like that. Then he references Mark Martin, which I find very interesting. Then Denny Hamlin basically calls Bowman a fucking hack and has been behind the other Hendrick cars this year. Basically threw a major cheap shot at Alex Bowman for basically getting into him and wonder, Alex only has 4 wins. I think Denny Hamlin's not entirely wrong. Some of the things I will disagree. I don't think that Alex Bowman really is a hack. It wasn't entirely intentional. They were battling really hard for the win. Sometimes you're going to overstep stuff, and sometimes you're going to have problems. But he's not entirely wrong about Alex Bowman being the worst performing driver. Despite Alex Bowman having the second most wins of the Hendrick cars, Kyle Larson having 9, Chase Elliott and William Byron both combined only have 3, and Bowman having 4. I think that the 3 of them have performance consistency-wise have been better, and I think that 48 car has generally been a more inconsistent car this year than previous years. Then Denny Hamlin, after the frustration, he went on to respond on Twitter that he talked about. He said, I don't understand. You're not going to understand my frustration. And then he says that he has gotten dumped twice in the last 10 weeks. First by, I don't think he meant entirely Alex Bowman, but he's been dumped the last 10 weeks twice. Remember at the Indianapolis road course, he got into it with Chase Briscoe. Those guys had issues at Texas a couple weeks ago, but they had issues at there. Chase Briscoe went into the grass. Chase Briscoe intentionally dumped Denny Hamlin because I think Chase Briscoe thought that Denny Hamlin basically had caused it. Then Chase Briscoe got a penalty, of course, and received the black flag. Then, of course, Alex Bowman here, and Denny Hamlin was very, very frustrated. Then Denny Hamlin says he doesn't really care what others think about him, and he says that he is focused on trying to win a championship in the Cup Series. I think here's, let me tell you my thoughts about this. I don't think that both of them, I think that Denny Hamlin was not entirely in the right for getting into Alex Bowman and messing up his post race. I entirely understand Denny Hamlin's frustration, and I know a lot of people are going to reference, well, Denny Hamlin dumped Chase Elliott 4 years ago, which is entirely true, so it seems like it's a little bit hypocritical, right? I don't think it's entirely hypocritical, especially when you're battling really hard for a win, and I know we referenced Kyle Busch 10 years ago when he got into them, but Denny Hamlin, you know, he's a guy that's going for a win and wants to win a grandfather clock. I know he's won 5 of these, so he has 5 of these. But he's a guy that's, and he almost lost a chance to run for the championship, not to mention, because he almost lost too many points in the race. He didn't earn a ton of points in the stages, and he did get enough points. He was able to survive. But at the same time, I understand his frustration, but I also don't appreciate, again, I will say this. I don't agree with him getting and interrupting Alex Bowman's burnout. I think that was a little bit egregious from Denny Hamlin, basically flipping him off, giving him the double burst and flipping off. I didn't agree with that, but Denny Hamlin has every right to be frustrated, and I think Alex Bowman was in the wrong in the situation, but Alex Bowman did not intentionally wreck Denny Hamlin. It's not like, you know, Kevin Harvick, he got overstepped, and it was overstepped and it was a mistake, but then Chase Elliott had every right to be really, really mad. So to me, if you want my honest opinion about the situation, I think the driver that's more in the wrong is Alex Bowman. Now, Alex Bowman did respond later. Interview says that he will talk to Denny Hamlin. He will apologize and talk to Denny Hamlin later in the week. He did say that he really kind of felt bad. Well, actually didn't feel bad. But he'll talk to Denny Hamlin and we'll get the situation sorted out. In my opinion, I think the driver that is more in the wrong is Alex Bowman. That is just my opinion on that. They'll get it sorted out. I don't think that there will be more that will flow over into next week. I think things will be done after this week. They'll probably talk. I don't expect any issues to happen because, again, Denny Hamlin is competing for a championship, and Alex Bowman had already got eliminated in the round of 12. So we'll wait to see if more comes out of this, but I don't expect anything else to happen, but we'll wait to see what happens. So, anyway, that is me for today's long NASCAR news video. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications to be notified when a video does go live on my channel. Follow me Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support Patreon as well. Link description below for that, and comment your thoughts on today's video. Who do you think is more in the right in a situation with Alex Bowman and Denny Hamlin? Let me know in the comments below. And what are your thoughts on all the other stories we discussed here today on the channel? Let me know that in the comments below. Anyway, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's video, and I'll see you guys next time for some more great and awesome NASCAR content on the channel like this. Take care, everybody.